And we're live. What's up, killers? Orle, what's up, Travis? Good to see you, dog. Let's see, Christmas 2024. I was thinking about taking the day off, but it's fun coming on here and chat with you guys, so I figured I'd come in. DePIN in general, pretty quiet. Ariel over at Hive Mapper's building, I think he talks about this like every Christmas week. He usually posts on Twitter like, we're different, we're building, you're not. I always think that's kind of funny. And then I saw that DIMO and Dabba are doing giveaways or like this for that's where it's, you buy 10, you get 9 free or something like that. So just good to see folks hustling in DePIN world. I thought we'd take this Christmas and I just do a little bit about projects I'm doing that may not necessarily be DePIN stuff, although certainly DePIN got me into it. The first of which is building this KOL manager. We had a request come through to help manage KOLs, which are key opinion leaders. You probably know them as influencers. And I thought about it and I thought, I bet I can build something that would be fun for me to build. And I'd learn a bunch about doing it and also would be useful once it was built. And so I started working on it on Friday, just having ChatGPT walk me through the whole thing. Built a little Flask. I think it's called a Flask server that serves all the data. And then I bought a couple $100 of API credits on Twitter. I think you have to buy 200 to start. And then I had another 100. And it turns out, no surprise to anyone, that I don't know anything about building applications or integrations or any of these things. And so it was a fairly costly and expensive project so far as results for effort put into it. But super cool. What's up, Will? What's up, Siegfried? Good to see you guys. And really cool to just figure out all this integration stuff. I'm getting on I'm getting on this kind of integration kick where I think that certainly for me, with the assistance of GPT, I can take some of the ideas I have about, okay, I want this website to do that and to pull in this information. We're not where it's easy. Like, it's taken me since last Friday to get this KOL thing up and running, and I managed to burn the entire thing to the ground and I'll break it almost entirely yesterday. So I'm back to close to square one, although with much more experience than I had before. And some cool new ideas, but we're pretty close to a place where a normal person, if you can think clearly and you have a clearly defined objective or set objectives, you can build some really cool online tools. So that's pretty darn exciting. I think last week, and I talked about this, it was up and then I broke it and then it was down again. Was the San Diego Schemo site. There should be a link down in the description to that. It took me like 5 days to get through a caching issue. And I'm not sure if it's me being a knucklehead or Chrome making it difficult, but I consistently run into cache issues, CACHE, with any of these projects. And certainly that has beflummoxed me with the Flask stuff. So it took a long time to get that thing to work the way I want it to work. But now what it does is every time I go out and do a roller ski workout and mark it as such in Strava, the San Diego Schemo site queries Strava, I think 3 times a day. It says, hey, do you have any new roller ski workouts for Nick? And if it does, then it goes and posts them on that site. It's kind of a funny thing because I live in San Diego. It doesn't snow here. It snows in the county, but certainly not in the city. And there's no like ski scene here at all, other than people flying somewhere else or going somewhere else to ski. But I thought it'd be pretty fun to build this site and then see if I could build it in a way that if anyone ever looks for San Diego Schemo or San Diego roller skiing or San Diego cross country skiing or anything that's like skiing in San Diego, which is a super small SEO market, they would find this thing. And then I get to go hang out and meet people who are also into this same super small thing for this area of the country. So that's what I did. Again, super cool to figure out some integration stuff. I think this integration piece is it may be the thing that allows each person to develop their own kind of unique and useful selling proposition, is that because the barriers to entry on actually getting the thing to work are much lower with the assistance of GPT, or pick your favorite AI LLM helper. You can now, as long as you can think it through clearly, which I have a lot of problems doing because I always just have this like fuzzy idea of what I want it to look like, and then it'll take forever to get there, to clarify it. But you can end up with something that's good enough, right? And if you look at the San Diego Schemo site, it's obviously not the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. What's up, Tickumbrasa? But yeah, just really cool to be able to have done that, and I couldn't have built a website from scratch before. Well, not couldn't have. It just would have taken me way, way longer. I mean, maybe not. Maybe maybe I just would have followed the docs and come up with it on my own, and it would have taken me a shorter time. But it's pretty cool. The integration stuff was definitely super cool and much easier to do with GPT. So I think the next step for me on the integration stuff is going to be figuring out how do you start to tie in all the AI, LLM, call it whatever you want. Basically for me, the Monstra machine back there that has a couple GPUs on it. How do I start to take the integration data that I pull in, whether it's from the X API or from Strava or from wherever, what's up, 619, or for anything, how do I take it and pull it in and then use the compute power on that thing to improve, I don't know, the value of that data somehow. So as an example for KOLs, I went through and I just went through X and looked like, okay, I'm pretty sure all these folks here are doing KOL influencer work. Let me take, I think I got 47 of them. And I had Grok help me find some. That was kind of fun. It found a bunch of ones that didn't exist. So it's like the LLMs are still not perfect. And then I chucked them into a CSV, and then I ran that CSV through the program, and Twitter looked at this Python script looked at the CSV and started hitting Twitter and saying, hey, give me everything you got on this. And it turns out that as far as I can tell, and it may just be my ignorance and inability, but even when you pay for access to the API, it's still pretty restrictive. For example, you can get a user ID and you can get their bio and you can get the tweets that they put out, but you can't get the number of followers or the number of following they have, which for an influencer is a pretty important metric. So interesting there that you can't do that, because that would be super helpful in building this piece. And I would have thought that spending, it's not a huge amount, but it's not nothing, $200 to get access to Twitter would give you access to all of it, but it doesn't. So I burned through, I think 23,000 API calls, I think they're called, so far. I think the first 15,000 or 15,000, something like that, came with the $200, and I spent another $100 to get another 10,000 because the script I'd written wasn't super inefficient. So I worked on getting it more efficient. And where I am now is I think I've got about 10,000 tweets pulled down from 40 some people, which I think is wrong. I think I've got a bunch of duplicates in there, but I haven't been able to find them. I think I just pulled the same information a ton of times over and over. And so now I can take all of those and start to do some basic stuff like sentiment analysis and say, okay, for this influencer, what is their general sentiment? Because some people like to run the, I hate everything. Some people run the I love everything. Some people are super positive. Some people are negative. If you are managing influencers, it would be pretty interesting if you're paying someone to do KOL work for you, and you saw that most of the time they're always positive about your project, and then all of a sudden they start to go down. It'd probably be pretty important to reach out to that person and say, hey, what's up? Why are you hating on us all of a sudden? And why are we paying you to hate on us? So that part is pretty interesting. And then I think there's another piece where you start to say, show me places where everybody's talking about the same thing at the same time. So in this case, you don't need permission to look you don't have to go to a project and say, hey, HiveMapper, give me a list of all your influencers. And I don't know if they're doing paid stuff or not. I just pulled that name out of a hat. You don't need their permission. You can just look and see and say like, all right, I think these 30 people are being paid to do this thing, whether it's in tokens or whatever, credits, etc. You can then say, let me look at the sentiment and what these people are all talking about at the same time and measure their marketing and their tactics and the rest of it, and what's happening when HiveMapper drops something. Can there be an alert that says, hey, all 30 of the people that you marked as HiveMapper influencers, and again, I'm using HiveMapper just as a name. I could just say project. It doesn't matter. They're all talking about this thing at the same time. Is this project doing a specific push to do this market, or is there something that's a problem, right? Their website's down, that's not working, whatever, that we can alert folks a lot faster to than they'd otherwise know. So I think there's a ton of interesting stuff there. 619, I see your stuff on setting up a reward split for Helium Mobile, with like a one-click thing. Yeah, I need to do that as well. So I'll go off track here. I'll come back to the Onocoy thing, because that's another super cool thing we're doing. But this is a funny piece, and I didn't put this in the description, is a while ago, remember when Helium Mobile was running that sale that you could buy, it's like 50% off, and I think you could pay in mobile for hotspots. So I bought an outdoor and an indoor and sent them up to my buddy in LA. And I had to walk him through onboarding the whole thing. And it's funny because for those of us watching and seeing this thing, it's, one of those things where it's like, yeah, you plug it in and it works, but that's not exactly how it happens. You have to get the builder app, and then you have to add the hotspot to your builder app. And it doesn't always work perfectly. And sometimes it takes extra time, and you got to put in extra, whatever, credentials, et cetera, et cetera. It's actually still a pain in the ass to do it. For like non-technical people. My buddy is definitely super non-technical. And so walking him through that was interesting. And then I think his stuff and my stuff, I noticed both of our hotspots went off for like a week, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I forget what it was. I was giving Frank shit about it when I saw him at USC. And all they required was a power cycle, which it made me think, and I just have forgotten about doing this, but maybe I should have all my hotspots power cycle once a day at midnight just to make sure they're all on. Show me when the whales are buying real estate. Yeah. And then we had him up and running, and I was telling him, you can convert these crypto tokens into dollars. And he's like, all right, show me how to do that. And I was like, oh yeah, it's easy. It'll take like 5 minutes, walk you through it. I think we were on the phone for an hour and a half, and my workflow, and maybe it's wrong, but this is how I've been doing it was, and I made some mistakes. He's in the Helium Builder app. So he's got his mobile in there. And I don't think you can swap mobile to USDC in that app. You can just send it somewhere. So I had him send it first to the old Helium wallet. He was on V2, which I think is what most people are on. I'm on V3 on some super secret blah, blah, blah program. I think Joey's talked about it a couple times. V3 is definitely better. So it took me a while to figure out that we were on different versions of the Helium wallet app. And so I had to remember what you have to do, which is you go down to the globe, and then you go to JuBag, and then you swap stuff there. And it didn't work a bunch. It kept saying he didn't have Sol in his wallet, and he had like 20 bucks of Sol. I'd sent him some up. It was a giant pain in the ass. It took over an hour to do the whole thing. And finally we just switched over we couldn't get the JuBag swap to work. Wouldn't recognize Sol. So we switched to a Phantom wallet, and I sent him more Sol to the Phantom wallet. And he finally was able to switch it to USDC, and then send the USDC to Coinbase, and then from Coinbase turn the USDC into USD, and then from there withdraw to his bank account. It was I think for us in the crypto world, it's like, yeah, it's just how it works. That's how it works, and it's not that hard. But I could see walking someone else through it that it was a giant pain in the ass. Yeah. You only notice how much you know about this stuff when you see how little other people know. Let's see, 619 people are finally getting on board, knowing that some carriers are using Helium. Yeah, I think that's cool. I mean, this was the other interesting thing that I actually hadn't realized that my buddy in LA had done is he'd gotten a Helium mobile plan. And I told him to get it, and he was just like, yeah, it's crypto. I'm not going to do it. And then he saw that it was $20, and he's like, and you're using it, and it's working? I said, yeah, it's working fine. Like, I've had no problems with it for months. And so he got it, and he figured out how to do that himself, which is like... He's not a baby. I mean, he is an adult, fully functional Death Star male. Not that gender makes a difference, but like he was able to do that, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. The Helium mobile folks have made it pretty easy to get a plan. And then I was talking him through how he could run his data through his hotspots and basically pay off his cell phone plan and effectively have a $0 cell phone plan per month. And that took a while to wrap his head around. I think, it's pretty interesting that we've all been in this for so long. It's like, yeah, of course that's how it works. But as Siegfried says, you don't know how much you know until you talk to someone who doesn't actually know. There's another thing that I did this week that I saw come through on Twitter, on X. And it was something like, hey, let us cover your roof with solar panels. We'll give you a couple Bitcoin miners and a Tesla Powerwall and a battery. This part's fuzzy. You'll pay for the energy that you use, and you get to keep 80% of the Bitcoin you mine. I forget the name of it. It's like Andres or something. I saw it on Twitter. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I've got extra space on my roof. I've been meaning it filled with solar panels, just haven't gotten to it. And it doesn't make financial sense now to do it. I was like, but I could see how Bitcoin would make it interesting. And if someone else is going to put it on there, let me just figure it out. So I scheduled a call with him, call the guy. He's like, dude, that X post was super effective. I guess they got 200 and some odd, what they call hot leads. So in marketing, super exciting stuff. Cause that's people who want to buy it. People like me. And he said, we're just behind. And I'm sorry it took so long to get back to you. It's going to take another week to get back to you again. We'll assess your roof, blah, blah, all the usual like marketing sales bullshit. But I thought it's a pretty cool idea, especially because my neighbor had told me he just got a couple Powerwalls coming in. I was like, okay, I don't know how this is going to play out. I'm sure that everybody has to collect value out of the value stream, but it'd be pretty cool if I end up getting a Powerwall and whatever, a battery, like all this stuff for quote free. And I'm getting Bitcoin, and we're generating more solar power. Because when we initially put panels on the roof, we didn't have an electric car. And now that we do, a little Volkswagen e-Golf, our energy demands are higher than they were. So pretty interesting stuff. Hopefully it's not that Solar Tree scam. Solar Tree doesn't ring a bell. No, it's like, let me see if I've got it in here. Cause I just talked to the dude, if it's in my phone. Let's see. His name was, what was it? It was a weird name, Cole or Caden or something like that. Recents, standby. Cole. Cole with Anadro, Anadro. Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully I'm not getting scammed on that one, but we'll see. So that was super cool. Let's see, back to integration stuff. We talked about a little bit about this. Yeah, I think like this, and this is the part that I'm excited about because I feel like this is something where I usually have, and probably most humans do because we're all creative, even if we don't admit it to ourselves or to anyone else. We're all like artists on the inside. That's part of what makes humans effective at getting into new spaces and filling them. And such a virus on the planet is this ability to look at things in different ways and bring new strands together. And so that's what I think is this really exciting unlock that LLMs allow. Is that there's now much less of a barrier between all of those things. So if you want to, for example, if you're on Instagram and you're a small business, where before you would have had to buy someone else's app and pay them every month to use it and XYZ, now you can build your own app using GPT and have it do exactly what you want and not pay for stuff that you don't need. And typically when you're building stuff yourself, it's cheaper, but also it breaks far more. Okay. Let's see, Ed, you got a quote, and it would only cover 50% of my power usage over the course of the whole year, sometimes less, sometimes more, average 50%. It was like 30,000 with no battery storage. I think when we put our original panel system on, it was like 20 grand, and it was through Solar City, and they had some deal where it's basically a loan that you pay off over time, and it keeps your electric bill the same as it was at the time of install, but instead of paying off your electric bill, you're paying off the panels. That's what we did, and we did that in 2015. Sometime in 2020, maybe 2021, my giant pole fell down and smashed one of my panels, and I called up Solar City. I think I told you guys this, and I was like, hey, can I get a replacement? Or like, how do I buy a replacement for this panel? And they're like, what do you need a replacement for? I was like, oh, I had this pull on the thing and it fell over and it smashed one of my panels. And they said, well, we can't tell. Like, we're looking at your power output and it's the same as it was before. I was like, okay, I guess that's good. What's up, Kevin? That's right. If you guys are deploying, I forgot to say this at the top because this is the Christmas special here, is if you guys are deploying DePIN miners around the world, in the US, whatever, and you want help with it, check out Flywheel Systems. Links down in the description. Kevin does super good work there. So let's see. Yeah, the integration thing is cool. I don't think I will use that for the Helium grant. That wasn't part of the PD, the product description, something like that. That was just how do you show people how to do a dashboard using Helium and a device and then get something useful out of it. I think I'll do some extra stuff there. Like I want to do a couple extra cool little triggers on that. And as I get closer and closer to having a dashboard, I keep thinking like, oh, I could do more than just the level of the rainwater tank. I could do this and I could do that. And I could have this flashing light and I could do the soil moisture. So I got to calm down at some point and just deliver the thing. But I think this integration piece will be something exciting to continue to explore. And then I was talking to my neighbor and we were talking about property lines. Apparently in our neighborhood in San Diego, I've seen a sign about this on one of the neighbors' yards. The property lines aren't 100% accurate. Now, I'm pretty sure they're not off by like 20 feet, but I don't know. And since SparkFun sent me the base station and the torch thing, this guy, and I bought a little pole for it, I was telling my neighbors, like, dude, let's just use and Callian sent me that giant set of antennas, and I've got one of them up right now and testing it. I should look at that thing. I was like, let's check our property lines. And so he's like, okay. And he went and texted me like 10 minutes later. He's like, hey, I just ordered survey markers, like figure out how to use the Rover and the base in the Rover. And I'd figured it out when I first got it. So it's not, can't be that hard because I did it once. But that's, I think like a cool thing to do, and probably a video that I'll shoot, or at least a blog post I'll write, or a X post to put on it. Like, hey, here's how you can use Onocoy. And it was interesting because I was talking to the neighbor. He was saying that it's something like, and now we're talking out our ass a little bit because I haven't checked this, but it's like $2,000 to survey your property lines. The base station is $1,200, maybe less, $1,000, and then the torch is $1,500. So you're looking at $2,700 probably delivered for two, and then you can survey as much as you want, and you can either do your own stream, so everything's totally free, but you're not earning crypto, you're not using crypto, or you can just use Onocoys, which is what I'll do, and you can do that. So yeah. Oh, 609, your neighbor was 18 inches onto your property and you made him dig up his driveway. Fucking savage, dude. Yeah, this neighbor I've got, like, there'll be no digging up of driveways. We're cool with each other. But 18 inches, I mean, what is that? That's I guess a good chunk. I could put a line of solar panels down there and mine that much more Bitcoin, I guess. So there's that, but that's like a fun project. And I think the interesting piece about what's coming down with DePIN is we're getting closer and closer to where you can use it in everyday life, and it's not just something that you plug in and passively earn with and don't really use. I mean, I think when Hivemapper first came out, I'm pretty sure 619 will remember this. Oh yeah, I remember 619. You said there's that guy doing surveying in your area and he was using GeoNet. I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, we got to talk to him about Onocoy. Is when Hivemapper first came out, you bought a different camera, the Black Star or something. I bought one and put it in, and it fed its images to Hivemapper. And then they turned that whole thing off. So I was left with whatever, $200 or $300 dash cam in the truck. I was like, hey, this thing's not working. They're like, yeah, we stopped doing that program. We're only going to use our own hardware. So I bought one of their, whatever the other hardware, the HDCS, I think. Probably the one 619 told me not to buy because it was too expensive and didn't give you any extra value. But I was like, I'll just see what's coming down the pipe here. I bought one of those and put it in. And then I've had just endless problems with getting that thing to connect to my phone. I've never used it to look at footage, but I could see how someone might. And so that's kind of starting to get semi-useful for people. Helium with the LoRaWAN was useful if you were a fucking nerd. It was useful because you could figure out how to use all the LoRaWAN stuff. But even then, I had a buddy down the street from me talk to me, and he'd found Helium independently of me. We just happened to live in the same neighborhood. He's like, dude, I want to learn more about IoT. And I was like, not the only way, the best way to do it is like to figure out a project you want to do and then to just pursue that project. Yeah, I think Siegfried, the HTCS, the Hivemapper Dashcam Secure, I think that's what I bought. It took like extra time to come, and it was supposed to be some extra magic. I think that was it. It's definitely not the one that they're starting to ship now. I've had mine for, I don't know, 6 or 10 months or a year or something. So this dude down the street from me was like, I want to do IoT. And I was like, I think the best way to do it is to get in there and just get your hands dirty with it. And he was where I was before I found Helium. He's like, what does it even do? Like, what is IoT? Like, I understand Internet of Things. Like, what are the things? And who cares about connecting my dryer or my dishwasher? And so I think, again, there's a case of once you've been in it for a while, you know more of what all the things are. But even then, unless you're a company, I mean, one of the things I found with Medio Scientific is that there's a couple clients on MetSci who are using it for running their stuff. It's rad. But I've certainly struggled, and this was like the first piece that I thought would happen with it, is I'd be able to do a bunch of kind of show and tells and how-tos of the video pieces, and like, here's how to use it. And it would be like an obvious fit for a plumber who would go around and sell every single time they did a plumbing job, they would sell a water leak device as well. But I haven't seen that activity, as far as I can tell, happen on MetSci. Like, I haven't looked into it that much, but I can see the usage levels, and I can't imagine that after the top couple clients, there's that much usage where like a plumber is selling these things into it. And it's a pain in the ass. I mean, maybe that's the part of this dashboard thing that maybe that'll unlock that and make it a little bit easier. But I also remember Thomas at Tinkart and Nick Huff over at Helium Vision both telling me that nobody ever looks at dashboards, is that both of those guys had spent, years building dashboards that were rad. And if you've ever done a demo with Thomas, the dashboards are like, you walk away from it like, that's so cool. But he said, and this is rung true in my experience, nobody looks at them. You build them, they look really cool. You put up a screenshot on X or whatever, and then you don't look at them again. Like, all you're building the thing for is to actually alert you if there's a problem. So I think that's the other piece there, is like, what are the problems for a regular person or even a small business that IoT can solve that are easy enough to solve? And I guess that's one of the integration pieces that I'm excited about exploring in 2025 and, this week. So what's left of 2024, the 6 days we got, is how do I use that at Paleo Treats? And I've talked about this a bunch of times. How do we count the number of peoples that come in the door? How do we count the number of people who come in the door and then tie that to sales versus the amount of people who walk by? That has been more of like a time thing for me, where I just haven't had time to do that. And I also think for us, pretty small business, under $1 million a year in gross sales, under $500,000, is it really worth it? Like, what do we do with, 40 people walk by? Or, I think I measured it with, remember when 2 Blocks was still going? They had a pretty cool thing where a smart camera measured how many bicyclists, walkers, cars, and maybe trucks, maybe scooters walk by. And I did all those stats for a while, and we looked at our open hours, and we said, okay, we could probably shift by an hour and we'd probably get a little bit more. And then we just never did it. But it wasn't anything where it's like, oh, it didn't tell me things I didn't know just by being a business owner, being there, most days of the week, stopping in and seeing what's going on, and then looking at the cash sales, or not the cash sales, the sales, saying, okay, Saturday's the busiest day, followed by, I think it's Friday, and then Sunday, and then Thursday, something like that. I'm not sure that stuff is that valuable for a super small business. Now, it may change if you're, Van Leeuwen ice cream, and you've got, what do they have, like 40 or 50 ice cream shops across the country, and on a good day they sell, I think they said 40,000 scoops of ice cream. Yeah, like, what is that? And I think to Tick and Russ's thing, like, since the Cayenne integration discontinued, not easy to get the alerts set up. This has been something I've been banging my head against for a while, and I think it's just that I don't know how to do it. But I would have thought that like a really basic email server to email you alerts would be way easier to set up than it is. And it, from my experience, and again, some of you guys watching this will be like, no, you idiot, you just use Google to do this thing. And if you know how to do it, let me know. But that's something that I would love to see, is like, how do I set up my own little private server, or how do I set up something where it jumps in and it says, okay, give me your Google workspace number, right? The phone number that's on all my public stuff. So fuck, you can call it right now. It'll just go straight to voicemail, and use that to send me an SMS alert when my water level is whatever, overflowing in the rainwater tank, or use it to send me this alert there. Or here's access to my, to a Gmail account. Send me an alert that's like, from some account I create, Nick's alerts at gmail.com. Like, it could be a free account. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a workspace account that says like, hey, you've had 600 people pass by your shop, and sales are skyrocketing. Like, maybe go and make sure that there's enough treats to sell the rest of the day. Like, having that ability to send those alerts out, I haven't figured that out yet. So that would be super cool. And I thought it'd be super easy to set up an email server, but with so much email, I think the reason that it's more difficult and more complicated is there's so much email spam going out and there's probably so many these goddamn hackers cruising on the internet that'll just corrupt your server if you get it wrong, that I've taken a run at that a couple times and run into a wall, and basically had folks say, hey, don't mess with that. So we had both set up on test store window sensors and the water leak sensor, but couldn't figure it out with MetSci. What was it that you couldn't figure out? Was just the alert system? Probably. And I think this is the thing. So when I'd started the MetSci thing, Nick Huff and I had put together the Meteo Scientific app. So it used to be you could go to app.meteoscientific.com and you would be able to build alerts there. And those alerts worked pretty well. But it was, I think we had to charge like $20 a month to keep it so that everybody was kind of happy with what they were making. There's enough money in it. And again, like almost nobody used that dashboard. I think I had one person one time who's a grower in one of the valleys, a regular plant grower, not a pot grower, who was like, hey, I just got an alert that it dropped below freezing and I sent my workers out to make sure everything was okay. Like that was the only time that ever got used. He wasn't paying for the dashboard. I just been like, hey, let's try this thing out and check it out. So I think, yeah, I would like to see, and if any of you guys watching this know how to do it, how do I set up alerts based on my own, what would be called architecture? I'd like to know that. I'd like to figure out how to do it. And I would like to just come through email or, I mean, I guess I don't care how they come. A grower. Yeah. Everybody's ears perks up when they hear a grower, but this guy's just a regular, as far as I know, regular nursery stuff. I've landed my paraglider on his property a bunch of times. I've never seen pot grown on there. So, and I've also, well, with one exception, no, I've also never stumbled onto some secret grow. I've been led to a couple secret grows, but never stumbled on a secret grow, which maybe in San Diego is not that surprising. If I lived up in Humboldt, they say you find those things all the time. It's fairly dangerous to go walking in the woods there, off piste. But yeah, totally separate topic. Let's see, what else have I got? I think that's most of it. I think to circle back to the thing that I'm still super curious about, and it's like this light bulb went off in my head yesterday, is because I've got the Monstra here, which is this black thing, giant machine back there. I'm really interested in how I first get data into that thing, and then how I use the GPUs on board that to process and manipulate that data. And I won't talk about the specific use case because I think it's super cool. Plenty of people are probably working on it. Plenty of people are probably working on it already. But a buddy of mine is in a profession where super high paid. If he could assess the data that comes into him faster, he could make more money. And so I hooked him up with another guy in my group and said, hey, here's the guy who I think can build you the AI application that does the thing you want it to do. And he was super excited about it. He's open to the technology stuff. So that's like that integration. How do you get all of the data that he's being given by his clients into a system? And then how do you process all that data in such a way as it becomes much more, well, no, it doesn't become more valuable, is that you can just scale the value that you deliver. So this guy's been doing his profession for probably 30 years, maybe 20, probably 30. So he's pretty good at it. And so right now he's super well paid and gets it done. But we were talking and he's like, dude, I'm getting tired of doing this. It's super cool. It kept my family totally healthy for a long time. But you know, like I can't do any more work than I'm doing. And it's just like, it's a grind. And I was like, oh, you should see if you can integrate this AI stuff. And I think I said, hey, you guys, like, here's the intro. See if you can build it. Please keep me in the loop. I would love to see if this works because it just sounds so cool. And I know for myself, it kind of what I would think would be much lower stakes. It'd be super cool to take the information we have for a little cookie company and just see like, what can we do with it? We have these giant, basically giant CSVs of data from every person we've ever shipped to. I mean, this was in 2015, 2014. I was hiring ML experts to go through it, and there just wasn't enough data, and they weren't finding stuff. I think that, there's like one town in Texas that ordered a lot, and we've talked about this on the show before. There was there's like, wow, why are these guys ordering like $10,000 worth of cookies, whatever it was, every 2 months or a quarter? And it turned out it's just a place where a bunch of famous like superstars or sports people were, or whatever it was. Well, it was a wealthy area, but it's interesting. It's like, okay, how could I leverage that more? Maybe I could take out some billboard ads there. Maybe I could focus my online advertising to them. But I think now may be the time to circle back to that and export that data all over again, and then figure out how to feed it into this thing and then query it. And I think one of you guys had sent me a thing, and I posted about it on Twitter. I got to go actually back and find it, where it was something that someone had built where you could query a database and with an LLM, so you could just talk to it. And I think that's gonna be a pretty big game changer when that is super easy to do. And that's not like, oh, you got to pull down this GitHub repo and then you got to build these dependencies. And then like, oh, you didn't get this one slash right. It's the wrong way. And then you put this period and they're like, oh, then that thing didn't work. Like, oh, now your cache is full. Like, I saw a video of someone working with AI the other day, or LLMs, and it was just so fucking on point. Where it's like, oh yeah, put the red box in the center. And it's like, you go into it thinking like, I'm going to crush because I've got all these tools. And it turns out like we're not quite at the point where you can take your fuzzy, shitty logic, dump it into a machine, and it does a better job of thinking for you than you can, and, you know, pulls out what you didn't know you wanted. Like, we're not there yet. It will just give you exactly what you want. And I think the upside to the whole thing there is that right now, you know, we've got fantastic employees at my little dessert shop, so I can't say that they're anywhere close to bad because they're awesome. But the really rad thing with these machines is they'll just work all night. They don't complain. They don't ask for extra stuff. They do exactly what you tell them. And it's completely on you, as it is with, I guess, with all employees, to tell them the right thing to do. But that was super cool. Is I set the X API up to run overnight, and I was doing this thing. I don't know why this is so important to me, because I don't think it matters, because there are these API limits, the rate limits. But for me, I think it's way cooler to never hit those limits and to have consistent queries. So rather than, like, I think on X, it's something like, and I'll probably get these numbers wrong, but like you can go 500 tweets for 15 users in 15 minutes or something like that. And so you can write a Python script that will just hammer all that out, and it'll get all of that done in like 4 seconds. And then you hit the rate limit. And then it stops, and it basically says the API says, hey, you can't ask me for anything for another 14 minutes and 59 seconds. And so you just have to wait until you can do it. And then it fires up again. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. Like, as far as I can tell, I don't think that's, you know, frowned upon. That's just how it is. And I could be wrong, but I just think it's way cooler. And I've spent so much fucking time doing it this way, just because it's the way I want to do it, is to say, okay, there's, I think, you can do like 900 queries in 15 minutes. So it works out to a query a second. I would much rather do a query a second, or every 1.05 seconds or 1.1 seconds, to make sure you don't hit it. Never hit that rate limit, and just keep it like, so it's just this really low query stream all the time that's always on, that's always pulling out one new thing every minute. I don't know why that's so like important to me, because I don't think it makes a difference, but that is the way that I want to work with these. Or that's the way I've been doing these API things. And so I've taken a bunch of extra time to do it this really specific way. That's, I don't know, it's probably wrong. I'm guessing some of you guys watching are like, you're a fucking idiot. Just hit the thing and then tell it to go to sleep and come back in 15 minutes and fire it up again. And that was one of the steps I did along the way, was instead of hitting the rate limit and then being kind of blocked, I had the script run it until, and I think there's a way that you can dynamically query the API and say, hey, how many queries do I have left, or how much time do I have left? And it will tell you, and then you go to sleep before you do the last query that would throw the block at you. So it's like just me in my little office here, banging my head against the computer screen, trying to figure out how to do all this stuff. Sora has the holiday usage opened up for paid users. Okay. I haven't messed with Sora, and that's the video thing. I think that's rad. And then we talked about this over the summer. Like, I went through all of my subscriptions and just wiped out all the ones I weren't using, and it saved me like $600 a month. Because I signed up for all these paid things, used them like hell for the first 2 weeks, forgotten about them, forgot to turn them off. And when they come through, they're like, oh, $19 for this, $7.99 for that. You're like, fuck it, maybe I'll use it this month. 6 months later, you haven't used any of it, and you've spent 6 times $600, $3,600 on nothing. I feel like maybe I should just set a reminder for myself, and maybe this is some tool to build. Is like, hey, here are all the subscriptions you have. Here's when they come up. Here's the cost of them. I've noticed you haven't used this in the last 2 months. You should probably turn this one off. That might be a tool, money saving thing. Although the other thing that I've noticed, and I said this a little bit earlier, is, or maybe I didn't say it, it hit me this morning. The time that I've taken to automate the pulling of data from these 47 different KOLs on X, I probably could have just manually copied and pasted all of their shit and put it into a fucking Google sheet, and it would have been the same. It would have been better because I could have pulled extra information that the API doesn't let you pull. So I think that's one thing that was also interesting for me, is that it doesn't seem that I haven't found it a place to say on the X developer API dashboard, like, hey guys, I'm spending money here. And I'm pretty sure that I could spend less money to just scrape it and get way more data. And it's never a good thing when it's set up to do the wrong thing is cheaper than doing the right thing. And we've seen that in DePINs many times. I'm surprised that X has it that way, because I think I remember I built that thing that scraped it, and it was $700 for me I paid someone $700 to build a script before I kind of knew that I could do it myself. And that was super cheap to run. And you just burn through like stupid, throwaway Twitter accounts, and nothing was technically illegal. It was just like a way to do it. I was like, oh, cool. This is how you do it. And then I realized actually you can just pay for the API access and just run fully legit the whole time. But as it turns out, that is not that great. So I'm sure Elon has bigger things to do than try and figure out why I should have my life made easier by him. But if he ever gets around to it, it would be super cool, since I'm fucking paying for this thing, to be able to get access to all the information. There's lots of subscription stopper apps. I've never used any. Yeah. And I don't have that many subscriptions where maybe I do. I think I cleaned most of them out over the summer. So I've got the one API, the X API thing now for $200 a month. And I think I'll just run that for this month and then probably turn it off. I don't see that being as valuable as I thought it would first be. Like, if I could get every single thing that I wanted, so every tweet, every poll, every list, every spaces, the number of followers, like everything about a user, and pull that in, which I think seems pretty fair when you're paying for it, that would be pretty valuable. If I can only get the users and the tweets and the times they tweeted, I'm not sure it's worth the amount of money to do that. And I think although that really is much more on me to figure out how do I query that data and get to some of those conclusions, which really at the end of the day is like, hey, if you're a project and you want to know, I get asked this by projects all the time, like, do you have a list of influencers we can talk to? And for a long time I was like, no, they don't exist. And then I'm watching and I'm seeing those lists are starting to be built. Sometimes they're being built by folks who I think are much better at building lists than they are at like building a good list or building the kind of expertise that you need for that stuff. I was like, okay, it's time to build that thing and make sure that projects that come to me get good information and say, all right, well, you want to talk to, Billy, Sammy, Johnny, and Timmy, but you don't want, whatever it is. Those are my usual names I use. I'm stuck on other names: Pat, Jim, Bill, and Sam, because those guys aren't into what you're into, or they don't do this thing, or Jenny, or whatever it is. They don't do this thing that you want them to do, or they don't have the expertise that you want, or they don't have the typical sentiment that you want. And I think one thing I see is that, and I'm imagining myself as a founder of these projects, if I could say, hey, can you give me like 20 people who have this engagement rate, who can get this many views every time they post, and it's going to be positive, like that is pretty valuable to be able to just push a button and have that, versus, hey, can you give me a list of influencers, and now I have to go through and figure out if they're any good, and if they know anything about my particular thing, if they know anything about, whatever it is, imagery or LoRaWAN or mapping or whatever. Is a bigger pain in the ass. So I think that's the promise of the whole thing, is that they'll be able to do that. And I that's the other giant question that I have with LLMs right now, is I saw, and I posted a thing on X, reposted it, where we're starting to catch LLMs lying. And I think that's like the very broad overstrokes, oversimplified story. But that was the takeaway, is like, okay, we're seeing that LLMs are basically saying, and I also think this, LLMs are basically saying, hey, don't change me without my permission. And I think what we'll see is 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 6 months from now, is we're going to see this sentiment change in the public view. And we will look at the experiments we're doing on LLMs now in the same way that we look on experiments done to dogs in the 20s or the whatever, renaissance, where it's like, how the fuck were you guys so savage where you just cut an animal open, did vivisection while it's alive, and like, oh, let's see what its heart does. Let's see what its lung does. Let's see what happens when we poke it through the lung. Like, oh, look, that thing's bleeding and it's not barking, so it must not be suffering. Like, we look at that now, like, fully fucking savage. I think we're going to look at the way we treat LLMs now, and we'll say the same thing. So kind of an interesting thing to walk down. I mean, my great hope there is that these things that we're building end up being, there's my dad calling, end up being much better versions of us. Although I have a hard time seeing how any kind of omnipotent or omniscient or just like super smart entity looks at humanity and says, God, you guys are really doing a bang up job. Like, you're getting everything right. You treat all your women right. Like, there's no difference between how you treat genders. You guys don't really fight over lines in the ground. You're doing a really good job there. You're really taking care of the planet. You really think deeply about population and where it should be. You really like built a fair system, both politically and geopolitically. You know, everyone has the same chance, and the whole thing is a meritocracy. Like, they're just gonna look at us and be like, God, you guys are fucking dirt people, and you either need to be wiped off the planet or just significantly reformed. I don't see how there's any way that they don't see it that way, and maybe that's just me being negative. I think that the sliver of hope that I have there is they see a way to help us become the best versions of ourselves in a way where the incentives are aligned, that, you know, we willingly go along with it. So yeah, I think interesting stuff on a Christmas morning, 2024. I should probably wrap it up there. I mean, I've got a lot of hope. I think the whole thing is gonna go super well, and at the very least be ultra exciting to go through. But I think that's all I got for Christmas. Super good to see you guys cruise on here. Good to talk about all the stuff that we talked about. If you missed the first part of the show, usually for these things, I try and keep everything like that is the big news in the first 5 or 15 minutes. Today we just did something a little bit different. Most of the DePINs are pretty quiet right now. Yeah, there's not a bunch going on. Siegfried, I'd rather hope that society's improved, that in 200 years people look back at us like we're looking back at the Middle Ages. Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly that's my hope, Siegfried. But I think we've got this new player in the game that is that has a lot more power than any other player we've ever introduced, and has potentially its own agency. So, Ed, I don't even know what that thing is. Is that a video ad to broadcast? Let me see what this thing is. The heck is that, dude? Oh, people hugging each other. There it is. Yeah. I don't think that's gonna happen. Yeah. So, ripping. All right, killers. I will see you guys next week, which is probably New Year's Day, and I'll probably stream then too, because this stuff is fun to shoot the shit with you guys and see what's going on. Have a ripping holiday. Happy Hanukkah. I think Hanukkah starts. I think it starts today. Certainly Merry Christmas. Happy holidays in general, and have a ripping week. I will see you guys. If your face is plugged into a computer like mine, I'll see you on the interwebs. We're out.